Welcome to the Grappling Grappling Rewind Podcast.
Welcome to this week on the Grappling Rewind Podcast. On this week's show, we are going to recap the Fight Pass Invitational 4. And that's it. We're going to cover the following events next week. We're actually doing this show way early. We're doing this on a Friday. We usually do the show on either Sunday night or Monday night, but I'm on vacation, so we're doing it early. As always on the show, I'm your host, Maine. Doing the co-host,
Miranda.
Hey, Miranda.
Pretty good.
Yeah, this is a weird Friday show for us. So the tournament was last night.
My whole week is going to be off now.
Yeah, we've not missed a show in almost 6 years, and I looked at my vacation and I went, we're not going to be able to do the show without making it weird.
Yeah.
But lucky enough, this tournament was on a Thursday night. Wish it didn't start at 9 p.m. Eastern time. But
yeah, that was a little crazy.
Overall, a bunch of good matches, a bunch of okay matches.
Yeah.
And an interesting tournament. Featured a ton of names. I love that Fight Pass is having these tournaments, and they're actually bringing out big names, having matches that we care about, loading up an absolute tournament with all the names we wanted to see.
I would have liked them to tell us all the rule changes and all the rules ahead of time, because going into this, I didn't know what the hell was going on.
Well, we have a couple of weird match change, like the Glover Teixeira and Anthony Smith match had really weird rules. We'll talk about that when we get to that.
But I think that was agreed upon weird rules, and then it got weirder because Glover got stuck. Yeah. And couldn't get to the event on time and all kinds of craziness. So.
Yeah, but overall, it's happening. This show's happening. I'm so happy we're doing this show in advance before my vacation. So if any news happens between essentially what is June 30th and when the show comes out on Tuesday, we're not going to do it. We'll cover all that next week. We'll cover Grapple Fest, which looks like a banger show. If you want to hear us preview that, that is last week.
And Honor Submission Challenge.
And Honor Submission Challenge, the event in Italy. That was also previewed on last week's show. So we'll recap both of those events this coming week.
And whatever else shows up.
And whatever else shows up. We're not going to preview anything today because of a time crunch. Yeah. But yeah, I'm excited to talk about this. So we never get to talk about an event right after. So this is kind of cool. What do you want to start with? We can talk through the main card. We can talk through the super fights. We can talk through the tournament.
Let's do the super fights and the main card first. Okay. And then we'll do the tournament, because the tournament kind of needs to be its own.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Thing.
So first, so let's start with Craig Jones Finn Penna.
Okay.
Because that was the headliner matchup. Let's start there. This was a matchup that I was super interested in seeing because of all the history. We talked a lot about the history last week. Craig Jones had been brought in as a training partner ahead of Felipe Penna's match with Gordon Ryan, a couple of months ago.
Yeah, a couple of months ago.
And then that match ended up being Gordon's match ended up being against a guy at B Team in Craig's camp, which was Nicky Rod.
Someone needs to tell us if it's Felipe or Philippe.
Look, I have called him Felipe Penna for 10 years now. The commentary staff called him Philippe, and guys have called him Philippe for years.
And then somebody called him Felipe, and they yelled at him for calling him Felipe.
But no one's ever corrected me for Felipe Penna, and over the years, I've got many DMs for name corrections, which I love and appreciate. But I'm going to call him Felipe Penna because old habits die hard.
Yeah, and part of this is Maine calling me out because I'm looking at my notes on a computer screen, and I have it Feleep, so it's Philippe.
So you pronounce it phonetically.
Because I was trying to make sure that I didn't pronounce it wrong, and then I'm like, hey, this is how it's pronounced, and he's like, nah, and I'm like, fuck.
It's not Pena, which I called him for years because there's no Enya, and you literally have in your notes no Enya. So this was a neat match because these guys had trained together. Craig had been in Felipe's camp, and so they had a little bit of history.
And they looked like they were bros, because after the match,
very funny.
After the match, they were just having a conversation about something during the match. In the match, they were having conversations.
Craig, I think, is a really jovial guy, and you can see that in the match because there was a bunch of times I was more impressed with Craig's wrestling than I have been before, and his ability to kind of get down and get a traditional wrestling single leg on Penna. And Penna tends to have a pretty upright, tall stance where that's something that's available. One thing I thought was interesting was you could really see the size difference in these two guys. Penna is obviously a weight class above Craig and has been. And Craig talked about it at ADCC that he wouldn't be at 99 anymore because those guys were big and strong. And you could see the size difference here with how kind of Penna carried himself on the feet. But Craig had more speed. And it was interesting to see Craig repeatedly, especially towards the end of this match.
Get into his legs. But he would always get into his legs right on the on the line,
on the edge of the mat, and they'd reset. And there was a couple times where Craig was very jovial, where you could see Craig could have easily just probably gotten him down.
Chucked him.
Or chucked him off the mat, and Craig, stopped, and Penna, I think towards the second time, Penna, the first time Penna kind of waved it off and kind of moved on, but by the second and third time, you saw Penna giving him I appreciate you not being an asshole and, pushing me off the mat.
He didn't do,
he didn't pull a Wagner.
Yeah, Wagner.
Which I love when Wagner, for some reason I love when Wagner does it.
Yeah,
when everyone else does it, I'm like,
well, because Wagner is also doing it to somebody who kind of deserves
but you know what you're going to get with Wagner.
Yeah.
But I appreciate both sides of the coin. The competitor that's in there to win at all costs, and also the guy like Craig Jones, where it's he's in there having a match, there to win, but also, he's not willing to push off the stage, which I appreciate that icon.
I also appreciated the fact that Craig did a variety of different positions during the this wasn't Craig sitting and trying to have him pass the guard. It wasn't him waiting. It was him kind of progressing through different takedown sequences. He would go into the legs, but then it was he gave up, and he wouldn't give up, but he would just change his attack. Yeah, say it that way.
Yeah, he would modify what he was doing. Yeah. There was, because they had the get down rule, which is the dumbest name for a rule.
But it makes sense.
It makes sense.
Makes you get
You're making
down.
them get down. So after a certain amount of time of inactivity on the feet,
30 seconds on the feet.
Yeah, after the first minute or something like that.
Yeah, it's something like that. But I think
they flip a coin and somebody chooses the person who's active.
It's not always a coin flip.
Right. And they talked about this in commentary. Yeah. The person who
it's either the aggressor or they coin flip.
If there's no aggressor.
If there's no aggressor and the coin somehow. They know with the coin. I don't know if the coin has the two colors on it and then they flip it, because in tournaments where I've had this situation where I flip a coin for overtime, it's one color on one side, one color on the other side.
Yeah, and that color chooses who gets to take top position or bottom position,
and they can get it or not. So that's my assumption is what it is, because it wasn't a regular coin. It was an EBI special coin, because
Fight Pass Invitational. But it's the same rule set, the same commentary team, the same referees. This was basically a rebranded EBI.
Yeah.
We'll talk about to the end of the show how we feel about EBI rules. Spoiler, nothing's changed in the past couple of years. They're not our favorite, but they made some changes. The get down rule here was weird because
it happened all the time.
It happened a bunch, and then it seemed like every time both guys would eventually just stand up. Craig had top position. He would kind of get stuck in Penna's half guard.
Yeah.
Penna had some really good using kind of the bear trap, that leg position that he uses with his knee and leg above Craig's. Yeah. He can lever sweep you over. Craig didn't get taken over by that. He had obviously prepared for that sweep specifically that Penna is the best in the world at.
Yeah.
And then Penna would get to his feet.
Yeah.
Or Penna would make space with his hands, kick off Craig's chest, get to his feet. Or Craig would fight for the legs, and then Craig would stand up.
There was a lot of chest kicks at this tournament.
There were 4 or 5 different matches that had chest kicks.
I know, which I was like, wow, chest kicks.
It was just really...
It's a weird thing to have in tournaments.
Yeah. Well, it was weird to see in this match in particular that, Craig didn't really want to be the bottom guy. He didn't really want to be the top guy. No. Penna didn't really want to be the top guy. Craig didn't really want to be the bottom guy. It was weird.
I wonder if that was just they trained together before, and so Craig knows Penna has a guard that's really hard to get out of.
Yeah,
and
unless
really
you're
hard
Nicky Rod
and really hard to pass it. So he didn't want to engage there, and Penna didn't want to engage with Craig on the bottom. So
with the leg locks.
Yeah, with the leg locks. So it was they kind of were trying to play out of each other's main game, and that just became this really kind of weird, we're going to stand up, push each other around, then we're going to do the get down rule, but we're not going to try to use the position that they give you for the get down rule to actually do anything. We're just going to get back up.
Yeah, it was such a weird styles make fights matchup where it was exactly what you said.
Yeah.
Craig didn't want to engage in the area that Penna was willing to engage, and Penna didn't want to engage, and that was top and bottom player, so they were both stuck in this, we're going to kind of wrestle. Craig, in the wrestling exchange, in the stand-up,
he was winning the exchanges.
Those, I think, very reasonably here. Oh, they go to ride time, not decision. I wish they went to decision here. We've talked about it for years. Points or decisions are the way to go. They go to ride time. They're both gifted the position back and forth.
Yeah.
Craig
chose to defend first.
Yeah, which a lot of guys at the top level do. They choose okay, I want to see what the other guy has. They kind of set the tone.
Guys, when I did when I refed the event a couple weeks ago, all the guys from Vanguard were doing that, and they're the Jason Rao guys, and they were all choosing to defend.
Tactically, it makes sense
first.
Because
you get the bottom of the round,
and you get the final.
Yeah,
you get to figure out what speed do I need to go? Is this guy going to hold my back the whole time? Should I like be looking for ride time, or should I look to sub this guy?
Yeah.
And then after everything's over, you get the last round to figure out like, okay, what do I have to sub the guy, or do I need to ride him out? Like you get to make that choice in the final round. It makes sense. We had a bunch of sort of weird inconsistencies with the restarts and with the setup, and both guys where Penna would want to go back and Craig would want to go back, and they eventually, like this entire tournament,
but did you notice,
it didn't seem to be clear how they were starting their overtimes.
Yeah. Did you notice during the get down rule that Craig was definitely taking advantage of moving when the ref would walk away from the get down rule?
Yeah.
He would have him, like, he would be on top in Philippe's butterfly guard, and he would be in good position. As soon as that ref stepped away, he would put one foot up, which is completely cheating. But I mean, if you're not cheating, you're not trying, right?
Yeah, and Penna would do the same thing a lot of times with his hand position. Like he would try to go over the hand position. They were both doing it. I think Craig was getting away with it more because Craig was better at the timing of when to use that.
And then, again, then you heard Penna like start to like talk in Portuguese to the ref or Spanish. I couldn't figure out if it was Spanish or Portuguese.
I know the ref speaks all three.
Okay, he does. Okay.
Yeah,
so
I think Vic speaks Portuguese, Spanish,
so I'm thinking
and
it was
English.
Portuguese then, because it was definitely not English, and he was having a whole conversation, and I could tell that like Felipe was getting pissed off after a while.
You can call him Felipe. You're probably correct.
Well, I don't know.
Oh, look, I'm not the name guy.
He was getting a little pissed off at the positioning, but he was saying it in Spanish or Portuguese.
I think Portuguese.
Probably Portuguese, and I was like, huh. He gets to argue in a language that Craig does not understand.
That was very funny. I saw because like it was towards the second or third overtime. They had like him and Vic, the referee, had like a conversation. And
it was because
they're talking about something
I think
here.
Part of it was that you had to grab. So I thought from back positioning that you got a seatbelt and you could put your hands together in your seatbelt, but allegedly it was you had to grab your wrist, right?
They've made a bunch of changes to how you can grip and grab and turn, and they didn't communicate it on the broadcast, which was really frustrating.
Think from what I watched the whole night, it looked like you had to grab your own wrist when you're holding someone's back, right? And then the person defending had to put one hand up on the top arm, like on the choking arm, and the other hand had to start in their other hand
or on the foot,
or
they let
on the
people
foot.
start on the foot.
And I noticed that too, because after the first overtime round, the second time that Craig took Pena's back, he had one hand on the choke and one hand on the foot.
Yes, which is what Craig prefers to do.
Because he didn't want that goddamn triangle to come in.
This was interesting. So in the overtimes, they go through the overtimes.
And I didn't know if that was legal or not, or if he was like sliding that hand down there.
I think it was legal because the commentary didn't bring it up, and the referee and Penna didn't fight it.
I was like, if that's illegal, like, dude just pulled it off.
Yeah. But again, that was one thing. So I've already got a couple comments from DMs about, like, you're talking about the commentary, like, there were moments of the commentary where it was really bad. There were moments where it was good. There were moments where it was okay. I think overall for the event.
But when you're also having a commentator be possibly the owner of and the person who created the organization.
Yeah. Having Eddie on there was a little bit of a conflict, and it was a little.
You kind of have to let him. You kind of have to let him talk. Like, what are you going to do about it?
Yeah, it was a little odd to have Eddie on this. For a lot of reasons, but again, some of his guys were in the tournament. He was super biased in matches, and it was a little weird. I'm not used to having that level of bias on commentary.
I don't even care. I'm like, whatever.
He was open about it. I think that was almost better. Yeah. But it was still definitely a weird tone for the event because he seemed to know some of the rules really well, but other times he would kind of get off topic. Yeah. And like this is one of the matches where he had some good points, but they would also get a little off topic, and they wouldn't explain stuff. Like, the athletes were talking a lot of times, and the commentary wasn't explaining. They didn't, never on the broadcast explained exactly what the restart position was or exactly how they had to have it. They would mention it when athletes would do something illegal, but they never gave like an overview of this is how you have to start.
They normally, like, in the beginning of a tournament, they say, okay, we have so many super fights today. They're going to be by this rules, and they put up the rules. Yeah. They put up the rules for the absolute tournament, but they didn't put up the rules for the super fights, and the super fights were all different.
Yeah, it was it was overall weird. Again, I wish go to judges.
It was a fun event.
Penna had some great moments here in the back position. I was always amazed at his back control and the way that he can pummel the hook stuff. He does a lot of stuff that old school guys do with the way that he controls the back, where he's not trying to necessarily his back control is so good, where it's like he can just prevent you from getting off his back. But he's not necessarily going to be able to put up offense the whole time. Yeah. But you're just never going to get your shoulders off his back. And I think he is one of the best guys in the world at preventing you from ever getting your shoulders off of his body. And you could see that with Craig. Craig a couple times was just unable to get the shoulders off of Penna's body. I loved that some of the overtimes here were only 1 minute. Yeah. I think that having a 10-minute match and then 12 minutes of overtime is super dumb. So I appreciate that we only had
they did shorten
6 minutes of overtime.
Yeah, they did shorten up the overtime, which was great.
But again, so Craig Jones takes that on ride time. Yeah. I really would have loved to see this go to decision. As a general feature for the rule, we're seeing more and more people play to the overtime, and especially when the match hits the halfway point,
and that sucks.
Guys put the brakes on
and
to
that
preserve.
Sucks because they put the brakes on.
Yeah, and they put the brakes on hard. And we saw that. Yeah. That's a theme for this entire event, is that the match would get to about the halfway point, and then if people realized that probably weren't going to sub, both competitors would hit the brakes on a match, and then wait, and then conserve their energy for the overtime.
Yeah, the only match that didn't go that way was the RBY versus Alex Perez match, where in the last minute, RBY actually
didn't have overtime.
And that didn't have overtime. It didn't have the get down rule. But in the last in the last minute, RBY was like, hey, I know jiu-jitsu. Let me try jiu-jitsu. And I was like, what the fuck have we been doing for the last fucking 10 minutes?
So this is a good enough time. Let's talk about that match. Roman Bravo Young versus Alex Perez. Roman Bravo Young, phenomenal multiple-time NCAA champion wrestler, which if you're not a U.S. listener, it's the highest collegiate university level wrestling you can get in the U.S. Aside from the Olympics, it's the pinnacle of wrestling in the U.S.
Yeah, and they don't know. I think he's training to go into the Olympics.
Yeah, he's training to go in the Olympics. Yeah. He went against Alex Perez, who is a really good UFC flyweight. Yep. And a lot of fun. I'm really a big fan of Perez. He's one of the guys that I like watching fight.
And this was a 10-minute, no leg locks, no overtime, no get down rule match.
It was a submission wrestling match. It was like a standard. Yes. It was like a standard submission only match.
It was also, they didn't pick a winner at the end. It was a draw. It was a draw if no one subbed the other one.
And the world class wrestler was able to take Alex Perez down,
but not keep him down,
and not really keep him down. And then again, you said the last minute of the match.
Yeah, the last minute of the match, Ario was like, "Hey, I know how to do jiu-jitsu," and started actually doing jiu-jitsu things.
Like he passed, he mounted, like it was.
And I was like, dude, why the fuck didn't you do this earlier?
Yeah, but at the end, the same thing where it was so weird to have.
Well, I guess the incentive was because he knew he was going to go to a draw, but come on, man, you gotta pick that shit up.
Having draws in combat sports is super weird to me.
Yeah.
It's a really weird thing to see a match go to a draw when there's no winner. It's like a smoker thing. Yeah. Which for RBY kind of makes sense where he is in his career.
Especially because they're pumping him up.
They're pushing him to go into the UFC when he decides to make an MMA debut. Or, a feeder to the UFC to then go into the this is a breakout for him. He looked good against Alex Perez. Had this match been points or decisions or any other criteria, RBY would have won. Yeah. But it went to draw. Yeah. So that was, again, another weird match on this card with different rules, and that was really difficult on the broadcast to kind of figure out because the commentary didn't do a great job of
Well, they went, so my notes, I have it written down because they do explain it when the match starts, but then they don't go back. So if you're just watching casually and you're not taking notes like we do as you're watching, it's a lot of information thrown at you, and then you're like, oh, and you completely forget about shit.
Any organization that's going to have mixed rules matches needs to do what ONE FC does.
Put it on the screen.
Put it on the screen and have one of the athletes or somebody explaining it exactly what's happening, and then the athletes walk out and you see what's happening.
And as the match goes on, explaining it as the match is progressing too.
If you ever have different rules, it's like ONE FC does that better than any other organization. I never watch a ONE FC match. I'm like, what's the rules? Because before that rules change,
they have
a little piece to camera or a little video they play that explains the point. I was in Denver, and there were a bunch of different types of matches, and they had someone come on the screen and they explained everything.
So when you went to the event in Denver, do they actually show you the screens and the commentary that's going on?
Oh, it's awesome.
Okay, so
it's like a theater show there because the commentators between the broadcasts.
You said they're
the stuff that you can't hear the commentary.
Yeah.
But every 2-camera piece that they do between the fights is broadcast in the arena. So you look at the commentators next to the cage and you can hear them in the arena. It's amazing. It's like a stage show.
That's how Strikeforce used to be.
Yeah, and the UFC doesn't do that. A lot of organizations...
Bellator kind of did it, but not really. But UFC doesn't. If you ever go to a live UFC show,
it's quiet.
It's quiet, and it's really bizarre. Like it's just a bizarre thing to do because you don't hear.
It almost feels like a local show.
Yeah,
because local shows don't do that for MMA. There's
no commentary going on.
Yeah, so. I think that if you're going to have different rules matches, it was just one of the confusing pieces on this card. Yeah. I think as an outside view, and I got a couple messages from other people outside that went like, wait, what was this match? I was like, yeah, it's a different match. And I had to explain to other viewers that watch jiu-jitsu, like why matches were different because it's unusual. So what do you want to do next? Anthony Smith or Mergali?
How about Cravar?
Want to do Cravar next?
Yeah.
All right. Helena Cravar defeats Emily Fernandez by rear naked choke. Cravar.
I think this is probably the most active I've seen her in a match. She actually had to kind of work.
She fought through some adversity.
She actually. This is her first her going against somebody that is.
What'd she call it? In her post fight, she called it, "This is my professional debut," or something
like that.
Like she's been against high level women before, not in tournaments.
Yeah, but never in
a super fight.
Yeah, never in a super fight.
And Emily Fernandez is no joke. She's a Bruno Bastos. So she was warming up back. I was like, "That's Bruno Bastos." And was Bruno Bastos black belt. I was like, "That makes sense."
Yeah. And I mean, she couldn't get her with her normal guard attacks that she got a lot of other people in the past, so she had to mount her and then get her back.
So Cravar spent a ton of this match playing from the butt scoop position from the open guard, and I was really interested. I went, oh yeah, I am really curious because we've seen Cravar wrestle in ADCC, but in super fights she almost always pulls guard, and I was curious if Emily Fernandez was going to be able to kind of deal with that, but eventually Cravar figured out
I need to get up.
I cannot leg lock you. And Cravar leg locks a lot of other women. Yeah. And Fernandez is good and a top level woman went, you're not going to leg lock me. Yeah. So Cravar, I was very happy to see, and this was what we wanted to see out of this match. Ken Cravar versus top level opposition like Emily Fernandez, or not Fernandez.
Yeah, it's Fernandez.
They cut off the Z.
They just cut off the Z in that.
Emily Fernandez, can Cravar deal with that level of competitor? And if she has to switch her strategy up, is she able to do that? Because we've seen plenty of prospects over the years that early career, especially Cravar is 16.
Yeah, especially when they're
not able to make that switch late in a match versus a veteran competitor.
When they're being fed matches, basically.
Yeah. And Cravar, to her credit here, halfway through the match, she went, this strategy is not working. I have to change it up. She does. She gets to mount. Beautiful mount take. Beautiful back transition over. Gets the choke in, snakes the hand in, and finishes by rear naked choke. I think 7-something?
7:26.
Of a 10-minute match?
Yep.
So,
I mean, that's one of the longer matches Helena's been put into.
Yeah. I was really impressed with Cravar here.
Yeah, I was too.
And this is exactly the kind of match she wants to
do. The other thing I
didn't
realize until recently, she was born in Croatia.
I knew that.
She wasn't, I don't know, I thought she was just a random American teenager, but she was she came from Croatia.
Yeah, she's Croatian born.
Yeah.
I found that out.
I
don't know why I found that out. I found that out within the last 6 months. I found that out. But
I was listening to an interview with her, and she had an accent, and I was like, where's this Eastern European accent coming from? And I thought it might have been a
put on Mackenzie Dern a little bit?
Yeah, like a Mackenzie Dern accent. No. And I was like,
nope.
And I was
Croatian.
like, nope, not Mackenzie Dern.
I'm curious, because she was born in Croatia, if we'll see her eventually going to European trials.
Oh, that's true.
Because I think I don't know what her citizenship is or her situation is. If she actually does have I don't know what Croatia's passport rules are.
Yeah.
But it is interesting. But this is the exact kind of thing you want to see from a prospect. Cravar taking a huge step up in competition and showing that she can contend at that level. Very, very much could be new waves female champion that they're looking for, and I'm pretty excited for that. I was amped to see Cravar take this match. And Emily Fernandez put up way more than I think a lot of people were expecting, because I don't think she's as much of a known quantity in some circles as Cravar. So it was cool to see, hopefully Emily Fernandez gets other stuff from this match.
And hopefully it also means that Helena is going to get more opposition.
Yeah. And more women that'll be willing to step in and test her and to test other women.
I don't know, 'cause she's like 145, so
yeah.
I'm trying to think who around that size, possibly like a man.
I would love to see Clay,
Elizabeth Clay,
her and Clay go again, because Clay beat her before, I think once or twice. At trials. And that's, I want to go back and
something
rewatch
like
that match.
Because they're about the same size now.
Yeah. I think Clay might be a little too much too soon now, but if Cravar continues to develop.
She's continuing to develop.
Yeah.
Do you know how many people they fed to Gabby Garcia at Fight to Win? Like, they fed so many people to her that they shouldn't have been feeding to her. So, like,
Gabby's tough to beat.
So why don't you feed the newbie to Elizabeth Clay and let Elizabeth Clay have a little fun?
And the rematch. Yeah. I'm curious. So that's that match. It was good. Watch it. I think we're gonna be seeing a lot more from Cravar.
Yeah.
In the very, very recent future, especially with how she's been tearing up the opens at ADCC. Next match, Nicholas Margali taking on Roberto Cyborg Abreu. Margali wins by armbar in overtime. It was completely blocked by the referee from the camera view.
Yeah.
I think it was hilarious that the commentary didn't know that they had fought twice.
Yeah.
Until the end. And Miranda, I'm super happy because you talked about it last week in our pre-show. You went, no, they fought twice. I was like, yeah, they did fight twice. Like, loop choke both times.
Yeah.
Margali looks amazing.
He does. He does.
What do you have to say about this?
What do you mean?
I thought in Nogi this match was a lot closer.
I thought it was a lot closer. Yeah, I thought it was too. Margali's being Margali. I mean, he's smart. He knows kind of what to do. I think
he knows kind of that is the understatement of the year. He knows kind of what to do.
I mean, in Nogi, because Nogi he is slower in Nogi. Yeah. He's not as fast.
And you can tell he's still very much learning the Nogi meta in competition.
I don't like saying this, and Cyborg is he's kind of in the other side of the mountain of his competition journey.
Well, he's 42.
You know what I mean? I know, but I'm also 41, so I feel
reasonable.
I feel bad saying that.
But again, you've looked at his performances. He's had rougher and rougher performances against. But Margali's 15 years younger than him.
Yeah,
Margali's 26, 29.
But we are finding out that Cyborg can't really get out of arm bars very well.
It is interesting.
His armbar defense is...
I'm curious, because Rachel and I were watching this live, and she was like, I wonder if his arms are fucked up. Because again, plenty of black belts, it's a frequent thing we see black belts.
Shoulder issues, all that kind of stuff.
Frequently, black belts like Vinny Margulies post pictures, they have all these chips in their arm and elbow.
Yeah, you have to go in and have them
and a lot of guys get them surgically removed.
Yeah.
I'm curious if Cyborg has a bunch of these chips.
Yeah.
And I would honestly be surprised if he didn't. Yeah. Because of the armbar from Heisem Reed at ADCC, because of this armbar against Margali.
I just feel like they know that he's
susceptible.
Yeah, to armbars.
Yeah. It was interesting here. Again, I wish they had another camera angle later that was still okay to see the finish. It was an armbar and OT.
Yeah. I appreciated the fact that Margali changed it up and went to armbar.
Yeah. We saw more guys go to armbar in this tournament than we've seen in a long time.
Recently, I talked to one of my friends. I talked to Ellis. When
Who
I saw him recently.
He
does a lot of these tournaments. And I was talking to him about it, and we were discussing that sometimes you do armbar just because you work the same arm and you just go 3 rounds in a row with armbar.
Of fatiguing that one arm.
You fatigue that one arm and you have them trying to hold your back. And so they have to use their grip to hold your back. So they're fatiguing their arms in both rounds. So you just keep on going after the same arm. And at some point something's gonna happen.
Yeah.
Unless they have crazy ability to, power through all of it.
Yeah.
Like we saw later.
Nicky Rod
another
in the
match.
fucking finals.
In another match.
So, again, Margali is on the upswing in his career. He's taken world titles. He's looking better and better. And Cyborg is still competing and contending at that world. 2019 through 2021, he won everything.
I think what he needs to do is go into Masters, because then he can
take... he's still competing at adult.
He can take all the roids he wants because they could care less.
Yep.
And when his little 3-year It's 3 years, right?
I think it's 3 years for him, yeah.
When his 3 years goes away, he can be like the Meows. He can do Master 1, Master 2.
He's Masters 3.
Because I'm Master 3. He's Master 3.
He's Masters 3 now.
Dude, he can go into Master 3 and he can beat up some old people.
Yeah.
I mean,
it is wild, though. We talked about him kind of sunsetting this side of his career. It is wild that he is still contending in adult. Being like 20 years senior to the majority of the field.
And we see how he stayed in.
Yeah, man. He looks good, too. Again, I'll watch Cyborg compete to the end of time. I like what he brings to the game. He is astonishingly hard to beat unless you are... Like, he is a great benchmarking now for guys where it's you cannot beat Cyborg unless you are elite.
He's like a gatekeeper.
He's an elite gatekeeper, though. It's like, if you can beat Cyborg, there is a possibility that you can win any tournament in the world. If you can't beat Cyborg, like, you have no shot at medaling at a major.
Yeah.
It's just... He's such a great guy to watch for that respect, where it's like... Only elite guys beat him, and that's kind of neat. It's shitty that he's not on the winning side of many of these exchanges anymore, but I do love that he is still out there as one of the oldest competitors, still gatekeeping the elite. And I'll watch Cyborg compete till he is done competing.
So it was Margali after round 3? Yes.
I think 2 or 3.
I'm looking at it right now.
Is it 3?
It's round 3. R3 is round 3. In 8 seconds. So he pulled that fucking armbar.
But that's, again, if you're going to get Cyborg, if you let Cyborg settle his grip,
you can't.
Good luck. Like Heisim and Margali, the exact same armbar where it's like they just got it faster than Cyborg could set and settle his shoulders into the grip, and they just overwhelmed it. And like that seems to me the only way that you're going to repeatedly sub Cyborg or you're going to heel hook him.
Which makes me think it's almost a shoulder thing because it's you have to get that grip, but if you don't have the grip, what they're pulling against at that point isn't your elbow, it's your shoulder.
That's what I'm curious.
If you think about like the full extension is an elbow, but like your grip and you're losing your grip, this is a shoulder.
The winging of the shoulder. Yeah.
So it makes me think it's a shoulder injury, but who knows?
Yeah, that would make sense.
You know what I mean?
Given the situation. So.
Okay, next one is Anthony Smith versus Glover Teixeira.
This was a weird. So this match. Props to both these guys for making this match happen, for Glover for getting there, for Anthony Smith for accepting that basically Glover's going to miss weight. He's not going to make the weigh-ins.
He missed weight by 7 pounds.
Yeah.
So,
but I appreciate that Glover Glover wins this by decision. I appreciate that Glover was basically like, Anthony Smith, thank you very much for taking this match. My manager, UFC, like everyone involved, thank you for letting me be able to have this match. Yeah. Even though that I was late, I couldn't get there because he got stuck with weather.
Yeah.
He couldn't get out of Florida.
And this is a wild thing because I had to actually watch this match to figure out how many rounds and how long the rounds were because the people that were commentating did not say it correctly. They kept on saying it was 4 3-minute rounds, and it was 3 4-minute rounds.
Yes.
And it was driving me freaking
confusing as shit
because the announcers weren't announcing it correctly. And then I'm looking at the time, and they're like, it's 4 3-minute rounds. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. And I'm looking at the clock, and it says 4 minutes. And I'm like, they either fucked up the time.
Which happens.
Or they don't know what they're talking about. And then, but anyway, it was MMA rules, which was another weird one. And it was open scoring. So they had three refs on the side that were scoring the match with MMA rules. Yeah. Which I'm like, what the fuck is the MMA rules with jiu-jitsu?
Yeah, of all the matches in this tournament.
But it's positional control and it's all that stuff.
So if you've ever seen what Fury does, it's the rules that Fury uses for their grappling event, essentially, mostly.
It's basically if you're the top player, you win.
Yeah, mostly if you're top player, or if you have overwhelming submission offense from the bottom. Yeah. But usually, if you are the top player doing something aggressive, you are winning.
And like a takedown could win your rounds. Yes. And they did rounds, which was really weird.
So the last time we saw an event with rounds, a major event with rounds was ACBJJ. Okay. And the biggest problem with ACBJJ had some of the best and biggest super fights from like 2014 to like I think they stopped in 2018. And they had Gordon, they had Vinny, like that was that ACBJ. They had the biggest and best super fights in the world consistently. The problem with ACBJJ was mainly the rule set, and that's eventually why it was closed because
it's a weird thing to watch.
Yeah, well, the promoter for it, feel how you want about him, basically went, no one wants to push the action. Everyone's boring. We're just not going to run this anymore because you guys aren't, the athletes aren't pushing the pace. But the problem is with rounds, these high-level guys, we've talked on the Grappling Run for years that we love 6-minute matches, matches that are shorter because it lets guys burn through their gas. It lets them push a pace. It lets them know what they have to do and get it done.
They're not worried about the third round.
Yes. But the problem with really short rounds is for high-level guys, they're going to take a couple of minutes to get into something.
Well, and that's also the problem with like amateur MMA fights in Maryland. I think it's Maryland. No, Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania. When you have 2-minute rounds, what the fuck are you going to do in 2 minutes?
Right. Well, for this match, you had 3 4-minute rounds, and the issue with this was the first 2 minutes you were kind of going to do whatever you're going to feel. Like we talked about,
you're going to try to take down. You're going to try your takedowns.
Feel the guy a little
you're going to feel them out, and then somebody's going to do the takedown, and then they're going to get to a good position, and then the round is going to be over.
And then as the guy in the bottom or the guy defending a sub, you've only got to defend for 90 seconds. Yeah. And you can shell, so it's like Glover or Anthony at no point could put up long, sustained bouts of offense because Glover or Anthony, depending on the round, depending on the position, could sort of just shell up and defend, and they didn't need to put up their offense because the round was going to end. I've probably lost this round. I'm just going to wait to the next round. And this is why rounds in jiu-jitsu doesn't work, especially short rounds, because 2 minutes of feel out, then 2 minutes of position with 90 seconds of somebody defending something because they know they lost the round. And then they think they're going to get it in the next round because all jiu-jitsu guys are confident in their game and their ability to finish and win. So like, next round's going to go my way. And you get matches like this that is Glover wins by decision. I think it was close.
It was close because Anthony Smith was throwing up submissions from his back.
Yeah. And he had that one good in the second round, I think, sustained kind of back control offense. And he was looking for the back on Glover.
Yeah, he had like one hook. He didn't have both of his hooks.
And he rode it around for a while.
And then he went to butterfly, and he went from butterfly to like almost like he tried an omoplata. Then Glover just kind of stood up and was like, "Fuck your omoplata."
That was basically the entire match. It was just very low output, very low activity, and consistently broken up by a 1 minute break.
But when you think about MMA fighters that transition to jiu-jitsu, this is why they have problems.
Yeah, and
this is what a lot of them do.
Yeah, it makes sense. I think giving that reset after every round as a viewer makes it really bad because there was every time
I didn't even know this match happened. I fell asleep at some point during this match. I saw it in the morning and was like, "Oh, I forgot about that."
Yeah. Every time that you'd get to a position, you're basically just waiting to get them reset into the round. And then you're not going to start them back in the position at the next round. They just have to restart. So you'd almost get something going by 4 minutes, which is very reasonable in a high-level match. Yeah. You know, matches are usually at the black belt level. Like a kid's match is 4 minutes.
Yeah, kids' matches.
The
adult
minimum time you can have for an adult match is 5 minutes. At black belt, it's usually 6 minutes at
if
minimum.
Not 10.
If not 10 at IBJJF. Or 15 for a super fight like this. It's I do not want to see this again. It makes for a bad viewer experience. I would love to see what Flo does on Who's Number One, open scoring. Hey, have 3 rounds. Or Polaris has done this. Yeah. Have 3 continuous rounds every 5 minutes or every however long. You score it and you let the athletes know, hey, you won that round. You won this round.
I think that works a lot better to have the... every 5 minutes them say judges favor, blah, blah.
Or even Polaris where I don't think they always broadcast it on Polaris, but the matches are judged in periods, and then you can win a decision based on your activity through those periods. Like, but don't stop the match in jiu-jitsu because grappling, it's not wrestling. Yeah. That works in wrestling. That does not work in submission grappling where it takes so long to set stuff up.
It works in wrestling because... wrestling, you're not trying to get to a submission. Like, you're trying to get to pin, but you don't have to. You can point play. Yeah. So without points being involved, if they put points into this, maybe it would have been a little bit more. But
because at least you can score a round and win.
Exactly.
Yeah, but with no points.
But with no points, like wrestling has points, and that's why it makes sense because you get a takedown, you get your 2, or you get your 1, or you get a push out, and it makes sense because then tactically you're talking to your coach to figure out how to not have that happen or how to get to a more advantageous position. But you're not trying to work through something that is as maybe labor intensive. I don't know. Like jiu-jitsu, you have
takes
to do
a while to
you have
get
to take
to
a while to
positions.
get there. Where wrestling, you can have little like spurts of energy.
Yeah.
And get what you
can
need.
explode through stuff.
Yeah.
Like
and
a guard
you
pass,
could do
you're
the
not.
same thing with jiu-jitsu, but it takes longer.
Yeah, for the most part, like the game is played at a slower speed, and even when it's played at a faster speed, like a body lock pass, it just is going to take 45 seconds to do. Like a knee cut pass, unless you blast it through, it may take 15 seconds of or 30 seconds of grinding through that in a 4-minute match at the highest level.
And then you might have to try it 5 times.
Yeah, that's just the reality of kind of the sport we do. And so, horrible decision for the rule set. There's a reason why rounds don't work in MMA.
But good on Glover.
Yeah, good on Glover. I mean, and both guys did what they needed to do in the rule set.
And Anthony did a great job, too.
Yeah.
Like, both of them, I mean, they played to the rules.
In no way meaning to shit on the athletes.
Yeah,
very happy that these guys were there. Loved Glover's post-fight speech. Love was like, hey, man, have me back again. I'll do it again. I love that Glover still has an avenue to compete, even though he's retired from MMA. I love that Anthony Smith...
he wants to do this, so maybe we give him real rules next time and not these crappy rules.
Yeah. I'm nothing against the athletes. I love that both guys went out there and did it. I just really didn't like the format.
Yeah.
So... let's talk about that's all the super fights.
So we go
hell yeah, let's move on to the tournament. All right, I'm not a big fan of EBI rules. We've beat that dead horse to death. I don't want to belabor it. This was a fun tournament.
This was interesting.
It was interesting. So
it was interesting at some points. I was like, holy shit, that was a really fucked up move right there.
Yeah,
you messed up.
I'm happy that Fight Pass got the high level guys in an absolute.
They did, and
because that's so rare. We have so many absolutes that's get announced.
When Pedro Rocha dropped out, they replaced him with Roberto Jimenez,
which is a hell matchup.
And I messaged Maine and was like, hey, he fights at like 77. How fucking big is he going to be for this thing? And then they had his weigh-in. He was like 200 pounds in his clothes, and I was like, holy shit.
He was 200, I think. Almost even with his shoes on and his shorts on.
And I went, that's like 2 or 3 pounds, maybe 5 pounds.
Yeah, so he's like 195 probably.
But that's a big Roberto. Yeah. I think it's a big Roberto. I don't know. Maybe he cuts a lot.
He cuts a lot to make 77, I think.
But still, man, that means we get full strength. Roberto.
Open this up for a rematch that we saw at Third Coast Grappling a couple years ago in their absolute that was also stacked.
We actually didn't. We started off with Big Dan and Argis.
In our results here, we started off with Nicky Rod versus... Again, I'm looking at my MMA news. I love how they format their results.
I have it over here in order.
Okay. Do you want to do it in order?
Do you want to go by in order? Or is that going to mess you up looking at
you go in order,
okay.
And then I can jump around.
Our first match was Big Dan, who weighed over 280 pounds.
286 was his weigh-in.
And Argis.
And Gabriel Argis. Who, again, I love Gabriel Argis.
Who's a smaller dude.
Argis is... I mean, he's still a bigger guy, but he's not 200 pounds. He's not 200 pounds, I don't think. This was funny. So Big Dan finishes this by heel hook.
Yeah.
Big Dan is so much taller than Argis. Did you see the way he had to throw his leg over for single leg axe for this heel hook?
Yeah, because he couldn't...
he couldn't put his heel on Gabriel Argis's hip. He just had to kind of throw his leg over. And, you saw Big Dan go, I can't... He finishes an outside heel hook from 50-50, essentially. And you saw Big Dan go, I can't get my leg to where it needs to get because Argis is such a degree shorter than me that I can't wing my legs here and have the control. I need to pinch my knees together to finish this heel hook.
But it was good on him to make that decision, to make that adjustment for a smaller person and get that heel hook.
Rolls for the heel hook. Pop. It didn't pop it, but you saw that it was in, regardless of where the knee position was.
Yeah, and you were like, ooh, that's not good. That's not good.
And we've seen Big Dan literally break people's legs before. Yeah. So Gabriel Argis went, not me, dog, and tapped, so I didn't have to see a leg break, which was great. But it was, go back and watch this particular heel hook because you'll see, again, the dynamic ability for Big Dan to transition that we know he has, where he can't get that foot on, but he knows he needs the knee control, so he pinches the knees together, lets the foot kind of float above the hip, but because he has the control on his hip line, he can still finish the heel hook. It was a nice little modification that when you deal with big guys that are trying to heel hook little guys, a lot of times they struggle because they can't figure out how to move their body to where it needs to be, and Big Dan did a great job here. We've kind of criticized Big Dan in the past for struggling against smaller opponents sometimes, and it seems to be, especially with this win here over Argis, that he's figured that out a little bit. So that's cool. That's cool to see for him.
And then our second match was Hassan Rita versus Fedor Nikolov.
Is it Fedor or Fedor?
I have no idea.
What do you want to call him? I read that I would Fedor. Emelianenko.
Okay, we'll go Fedor.
Because
he used to be the head coach at 10th Planet St. Petersburg in Russia. Yeah. And then he came over to
train with Eddie.
To train with Eddie in LA.
Yeah. So new brown belt takes on Hassan Rita. This was a weird match.
Yeah.
I was impressed with Fedor here. He was aggressive. He's not a guy that I knew anything about going into this tournament.
No.
He's a guy I know now. I honestly, he
gave Rita more of a struggle than I expected.
Yeah. This also seemed like a weird match for Rita. Again, I want to speak about this in a way that doesn't take away from Fedor's ride time win on Hassan Rita, but in the regulation here, where we expected Hassan to win, Hassan gets to a couple of positions, gets to an arm, but is never really able to settle Fedor down or get anything going consistently on him.
I feel like Russian-born jiu-jitsu guys have an ability to not. You can just beat the crap out of them, and they just kind of keep on coming.
Yeah, they're tough. They're tough. There's
a toughness. There's a weirdness or a weird toughness that comes from that. I don't know if it's just growing up in that area where they just. I don't know. Maybe their training is I've heard that their training is ridiculous over there. If you are,
go back and watch the Fedor videos of him training.
If you're ridiculous. Because they call it something. They call it a master something. It means that that's what you're going to do with your life is do a master of sport. That's what it was called.
Well, no, master of sport means you. There's conditions for master of sport. You win a certain thing at a certain level consistently, and then you can retire as master of sport. But you can actually lose the master of sport title too if you continue to compete and lose that title.
Oh,
so it's weird. So Fedor being a master of sport.
Well, I don't know if he was or not.
He was.
Oh,
no, not this Fedor. Sorry, Fedor Emelianenko. In his career, he retired as a master of sport in combat sambo and sambo. But didn't lose that title in the tournaments he competed in.
Okay, anyway. Our side note.
So, Fedor Nikolov here, super tough. Hassan, it looked like Hassan was not cold. He didn't come out super hard in this match. He wasn't able to really dominate.
And it seemed like he was also frustrated in certain positions when he couldn't get what he wanted.
Yeah. He was getting stalemated by Fedor. And then a couple times, Fedor threw up a really nice kind of Basami, a flying scissor leg takedown that looked beautiful. I was very impressed with the technique going to that.
He started with one, right?
Yeah.
Right off the bat, it was
and it was good. It wasn't a bullshit. We see a lot of guys throw that up and it's not good.
Yeah.
This was very well done. It's not technique we see a ton. Fedor has done this a lot. And Eddie actually talked about him breaking a guy's leg in training with this.
Really?
Which is why it's banned now.
Yeah.
So this is a technique that he is very familiar with, and that is evident here with how he hit it on Hassan Rita here.
Hassan Rita also has really long legs.
He does.
Which
was scary for me, but he's not able to get it. Hassan never gets kind of locked down for it. This was a match where not a whole lot really got settled.
Yeah.
They go to overtime, and we know the 10th Planet guys are good at overtime.
And I think that was also what Fedor was realized. He was hey, I can beat this guy in overtime because overtime is my jam.
Yes.
And this is all I do.
And that was really, and Eddie Bravo on commentary talked about that, and Fedor even though Hassan is now a B team, he hasn't been a B team in a huge amount of time. The B team guys do prepare for 10th Planet overtime and overtimes, but it was evident here that Rita has not spent a ton of time prepping the overtime with some of the ways that he was fighting the hands, fighting the positions, fighting he went for the arm, which is, I think, if you're Hassan Rita, exactly what you do. But you saw Fedor he knew how to defend the arm starting from that position in overtime better than Rita knew how to finish it starting from that position. This seemed, you could see that this was not a drill that Hassan had spent a ton of time doing. And I think after this, that will change for Hassan Rita if he's in more of these tournaments. But that was really evident here. And you could see Fedor just was better at the overtime. He went arm, and then he went riding the back. He got the ride time he needed and beat Rita pretty convincingly in overtime.
And then after that, we had Wagner Hosha versus Felipe Andrew.
This match was cool. So this match was nice back and forth.
Yeah, I like this match. It was fun.
Yeah, this was like two jiu-jitsu guys that are like old school jiu-jitsu guys going at it. And Felipe's not really an old school jiu-jitsu guy, but Wagner is. Yeah. But Felipe does play that classic Brazilian guy, Brazilian jiu-jitsu. You know, he's coming up through the IBJJF.
I also always forget that Wagner is Brazilian.
Yeah.
I always forget that fact. I always just think he's like, I don't know.
He's a Florida man. No, he's Brazilian.
I think the facial hair, since like I see it and I'm like, oh, he's just a random American guy.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, oh no, he's Brazilian. I forget this fact.
Yeah. So let's talk about the finish here. Felipe Andrew goes for essentially a sit-up guard.
Yeah.
He loops under Wagner's leg, and then I think in watching this, he just makes an error.
Yeah.
Like Felipe Andrew just opens his legs to kind of like off-balance Wagner, and Wagner looks and goes, hey man, I'm in single leg X on my side. That's single X. I'm in 50-50 essentially on my side with my leg inside. I can just drop back and heel hook you here because your leg is in that position. You've given me your leg. And he does that and finishes, which it was so weird to watch this in real time because Felipe Andrew is a really good leg locker. Like, he has a lot of really high-level leg lock wins.
I truthfully didn't expect to see Wagner Hosha win by heel hook.
We know Wagner has good heel hooks. We've seen him do it before.
I just didn't expect that.
I don't think we would have seen it, but Andrew made a mistake here. Yeah. I mean, he just opened his leg trying to off-balance Wagner and kind of like a pendulum from the sit-up guard.
Yeah.
And Wagner went, you've just given me your leg at my hip line. I'm just going to finish you. I wish I had kind of more analysis to make on the finish, but it just seemed like Felipe made an error there and didn't, and just left his leg out. Wagner also, he does clear the other foot there quickly. But yeah, it just seemed like an unforced error by Andrew that Wagner went, oh, cool, I can just finish you here. And Wagner has been around for a long time, has great finishes, and gets the finish. Go back and watch this whole match, though, because the match back and forth is pretty fun. Yeah. This was I would love to see these guys in a super fight.
Yeah, it's fun times.
Because this was a really, really well-matched.
I always like how Wagner also, like, as it gets rougher, he starts smiling more.
Yeah.
And you start hearing, like, you can't tell exactly what he's saying, but, like, he's talking shit while he's, like, during his matches. I love that.
So my wife...
It's hilarious.
Wagner's my wife's favorite guy to watch.
Is she? Is he?
So whenever Wagner's on, he's like, I'll watch Wagner.
Yeah, yeah.
And ADCC 2019, that was the only person that she, like, wanted a picture with was Wagner. It was very funny. So... Wagner's great because he'll smile at you the whole time. Yeah. When Wagner suddenly stops smiling at you during a match,
it's like, oh,
shit got real. And like once or twice a year, Wagner will have a match where like something will happen, like something will collar time really hard, and he'll just like, or something will happen,
but normally,
and he'll just look at you and he stops smiling, and it's like, oh, this is that Wagner.
But normally, like if you collar time hard, that's when he starts giggling.
Oh yeah, he's just like, we're going.
He like likes that. He like wants you to freaking beat.
Wagner
the shit
fought
out
in
of
the UFC.
Yeah.
Wagner's done it all. He's done combat jiu-jitsu. He's won combat jiu-jitsu. Like you're not going to cow Wagner with hard strikes. Like Wagner is a guy that they use in the ADCC rules seminar and the judges and coaches, the judges and referees seminar, when they talk about, he goes, hey man, Big J talks about it and Mo talks about it. They go, if you guys can't reset someone at the open or at this level for like these opens, imagine trying to reset Wagner Hosha.
Yeah.
And like he's the guy because like Wagner will play, like he will push to the extent the referee's gonna let him. If you let Wagner get away from you, he is that kind of competitor. He's just game.
He's gonna take the match away if you.
And this finish is that like any little thing you give him, he will take to the fullest extent, and that's again why I appreciate him as a competitor. And he wins by heel hook here. So now we are on to the rematch of Nicky Rod versus Roberto Jimenez. This is a rematch from Third Coast Grappling, the Absolute, where Roberto Jimenez won a decision victory over Nicky Rod.
Roberto, when we started, so this goes into overtime, and when we get into overtime, the facial expressions of Roberto Jimenez, there's some crazy stuff.
Yeah.
He has some I don't even know how to explain it. He has like this angry, like intense,
face.
like it's something. You have to watch it sometimes.
This was a fun match. It was It was wild. So go back and watch the Third Coast Grappling match. It's a good match. It is a bit of a frustrating match because if I recall, I watched it live and I watched it a little after it happened as well. I haven't watched it in some time. I recall this match being Nicky just didn't really know how to deal with the guard of Jimenez, and Jimenez has the best back take from double unders from the close guard of anyone in the sport. I've said it for a couple years now. If Roberto Jimenez can get double unders on you from the close guard, there is a good chance that he can take your back. He does it better than anyone else. And Nick Rodriguez here a couple of times gets into the close guard, and Roberto Jimenez locks and gets under the shoulder, and then you see Nicky Rod go, I've been here before, and you saw Nicky Rod go, I now know how to stop this. This was one of the matches, a rematch 2 years later, you go, oh, Nicky Rod has made massive improvements to his game.
And he's totally learned from that experience of like, I'm not going to let him get to that position.
Yeah. And it was a problem for him in their previous match. In this match, it was not a problem. Nicky Rod knew exactly what he had to do. He knew how Roberto was going to move. He knew how to keep him on the mat.
But it also surprised me to watch Roberto in overtime after the first round of overtime where Nicky gets out in like 2 seconds.
Yeah.
Like the second time you see Roberto change his positioning so that he can hold him. He doesn't hold him that much longer, but he holds him longer.
The adjustment was nice. I was also astonishingly impressed at how good Nick Rodriguez is at getting out of the back.
Oh, yeah.
He bridges over so quickly and turns. You saw it in the first round here. Look at Roberto Jimenez.
He gets out in like 5 seconds.
Roberto Jimenez is what everyone looks like with Nicky Rod on the back of Nicky Rod. Nicky Rod just bridges out of that position and escapes. Like, that is what every guy looks like. So if you ever were curious, like, what you'd be like on Nicky Rod's back,
dude, I think
that's what it looks like.
I think you would look a lot worse.
You'd look a lot worse than Jimenez, but like, but again, I'm not gonna be able to make the adjustments that Jimenez is able to make later in those overtimes.
Unfortunately, we never see our one friend go against Nicky Rod because the video never showed up.
Yeah, we might see it eventually.
You never know. One day.
But no, it's cool to see Jimenez be able to make those adjustments. Again, he cannot beat Rodriguez in the way he did 2 years ago, but it was cool to see, Jimenez is still very, very good and has also made improvements in the way he can control the back and the way that he's dealing with the athleticism and the size difference, the 35, 34-pound size difference of Nick Rodriguez here. But Rodriguez has gotten a lot better on the back. We saw that at his EBI tournament, and we saw that here where he just controlled Jimenez, and Jimenez escaped one of the rounds, right?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, but Rodriguez just consistently knew how to deal with like the speed of Jimenez here, and was able to hold his back and control him, and that was the match. Anything else on the first round here?
Nope.
Moving on to the second round. What do you got for second round?
The first was Big Dan versus Fedor.
Yeah, 18 seconds.
38 seconds.
Was it really?
Yeah, I have it written down. 38.
It was real quick.
Yeah.
So Fedor goes for rubber guard, and Big Dan goes, hey, man, that's a nice leg you have between my legs. It would be a shame if someone were to knee bar you. Yeah. And then just belly up knee bar him. Belly down knee bars him.
Very similar to a dog bar, but not really.
You said it was a dog bar.
It's like the same mechanics.
It's basically the same thing.
I mean, what I was also thinking is, could you imagine, like, if you're in rubber guard, your one leg is like way the fuck up there.
Oh yeah.
Like, not only is it your knee, but it's also your crotch. Like, it's a crotch ripper.
It's a groin. It's a groin stretch. It's the same. Yeah, the Big Dan, and then Big Dan's 286, and he is knee barring you from top position with his leg.
And Fedor was not that big. He might have been 180. 190.
Yeah, he was one of the smaller guys. He was like Argis's size. This was so. If you haven't seen this knee bar, if you don't know what a dog bar is that knee bar that you hit from essentially dogfight position where someone looks like they're peeing on a fire hydrant. You go underneath them and then you do a knee bar with just your legs holding onto their body.
Yeah.
So you're facing the person as opposed to the other way. This is from the guard. I think some people, you called it a dog bar. I think a dog bar is pretty correct. This is not what I would call a dog bar, but I actually don't have a better name for it. So I think dog bar does work here.
I don't.
Where Big Dan just locks his calf underneath of the shin and just bellies his hips down onto the knee because he's controlling Fedor's chest.
It's like a dog humping the leg.
Yeah. Peeing on a fire hydrant, humping a leg. Like you bellied and hip down into the knee, and he gets a tap really quick. Super neat knee bar, not one we see with a huge amount of regularity, but we know
you
Dan
see
is a
him
leg
here.
lock
You
specialist.
you see him here or there, but when you see him hit, they're a fast tap. Like it's like it's a you're gonna die.
It's
tap.
like a violent armbar. It's straight where there's nothing on the other side of the knee.
Yeah.
And it goes from not being tight at all to immediately being super tight, and you got to tap. He hits it very quickly. Big Dan, again, we're starting to see him figure out the smaller people and starting to be able to tap the smaller people, and it's very interesting. Next one, we had Wagner Hosha versus Nicky Rod.
This was a great match.
This was a great match. Like Wagner Hosha came to bang.
Yeah, when I heard this match was happening, I was like, oh yeah, this is good.
This is a good match. Wagner 211 coming into this match. This is, I think, the biggest we've ever seen Wagner Hosha.
Yeah,
Nicky Rod weighed in at 234.
Yeah.
And Nicky Rod wins in rear naked choke in overtime.
The weird thing was, did you notice they called a stall on Nicky Rod before one of the get down rules, and I was like, what the fuck is even going on? Like they called it, and then the announcer said that it was called, but then nothing happened out of it. I was like, what the fuck does that even mean?
Yeah, I think a couple of events ago they explained the rules better. Again, this was one of my gripes with the commentary.
Do they do something with the stall?
It does. It means if everything's it's a criteria. It's a criteria at the end.
Okay. Does it follow him throughout the tournament?
I think it does.
Okay.
I think it's one of those, but it's like who else used it? Quintet used them.
Oh, okay.
And they follow the whole team, and then at the end, the amount of stalls you have can be the deciding factor if you go to a draw. So this...
Oh, yeah. The other thing about this whole thing was we can talk about it at the end, the whole... allegedly Gordon was giving money to anybody that would tap somebody.
$500
from B team.
And he paid out.
Yeah.
I think so who tapped?
No, he paid Craig Jones $500, I think.
Oh, that's what it was?
The post I saw was him paying Craig Jones $500.
I didn't realize it was Craig Jones.
Yeah, that was Craig Jones's original post.
I didn't look at that. Okay, that's
it was
kind of
B
funny.
team's. It was B team's page, but I assumed it was Craig Jones posting it. I don't know. I was trying to figure out what was going on and the money that was exchanged, because then there were a bunch of jokes. If you
go back and
hilarious. Go to Instagram. Go to B Team's post about it. It's fun.
This was a great regulation match. Wagner Hosha again came to bed. He was putting it to Nicky Rod as much as he could. Nicky Rod dealing with it very well.
Yeah,
and
it was kind of like, like the big giant like pushing the child away. Like, like just kind of, and you could tell like Wagner really tried to take him down, and like you could hear Wagner hitting Nicky Rod with his head as he was trying to take him down, and it was like Nicky Rod just didn't budge.
Again, Nicky Rod's got good wrestling. He's quick and he's so strong. And again, Wagner was doing everything you could possibly do to deal with him.
And he wasn't getting tired either. I was like, holy shit, Wagner just keeps on moving.
I'd love to say there was one time, and this is the moment that my wife and I both were watching this match live, and we were like, man, Nicky Rod is a freak athlete. At one point towards right at the end of the match, Nicky Rod is like knees down on the mat, and he's kind of like almost in a seated position.
Yeah.
And Wagner Hosha comes down and does a spear double with his head, like a headbutt.
Yeah.
Like Squirtle used headbutt is what it looked like.
He tried to do like a blast double from his knees, but he did it like spear wise,
which is again perfectly fine and legal, and Wagner's very good at that. We've seen him win matches with that.
You're gonna go face first.
Nicky Rod, he sees Wagner come down.
Yeah.
He sees Wagner start to move. He's able to get his legs out from under him and behind him to sprawl out, while Wagner is like coming and changing level into him. That to have the awareness.
Yeah.
I'm using my fingers here. Awareness and speed at 235 to do that.
Oh, Nicky Rod's sprawl a couple times. I was like, holy fuck, that's a good sprawl for like a man of
big
his size.
dude. Like that is Nicky Rod. I think has one of the best sprawls in jiu-jitsu at that weight. He is probably the quickest sprawl of anyone at heavyweight like that. It is phenomenal athleticism. And again, he leverages it here because Wagner will push you to that place in a match. And it was cool to see Nicky Rod be able to contend with that, both now technically, a lot of ways that he was dealing with, like shucking Wagner off and pulling him down, and like dealing with the feints that Wagner had. And then also in these moments that Wagner would just commit super hard, he would like turn or snap down or get his legs behind him and sprawl. It was great to see like Nicky Rod still can leverage that. He's not just trying to do jiu-jitsu. He still kind of remembers the wrestling base that he has and can still use that. They go to overtime. Nick Rodriguez, one of the best guys in the world, on the back. Even though he's only 20 pounds bigger than Wagner here, you could see that like there's a little bit of a differential of strength there. Again, Wagner's a guy that used to be at 45.
Yeah.
You know, had career matches at 145, at 155, at 170, at 85. You know, he's slowly moved up almost 60 pounds throughout his career.
This rear naked choke was like a nasty one, too, because it was like right across the face.
Oh, yeah.
It was like, you know, with Wagner, he's going to do it to you. So it's kind of like, you know, he's going to try to like neck crank you as he grabs it. He's like, okay, I'm just going to go across
But
your
again,
face.
all the guys that level are good for it. And you saw Nicky Rod go, yeah, man, it's going to be the face. But Nicky Rod's famous for that quote, everything below the eye. What is it? I'm going to fuck the quote.
I think it's everything below the eyeballs is the chin,
is the neck.
Is the neck.
Everything below the eyebrows is the neck.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just like, whew, and that came true in here because he was over like the face and almost the nose, not quite, and just cranked. Wagner was like, nope, he's Nicky Rod. I'm good.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a great finish here in overtime. I wish that again it was a judge and a ref, but a nice finish in overtime. We moved to the finals, the big show.
Yeah.
The question everyone was asking: Big Dan versus Nicky Rod, New Wave versus B Team, a purple belt versus a brown belt.
Yeah.
Technically, both these guys could very easily be.
And I was surprised with this match. What I was wondering was if Nicky Rod could pass Big Dan and could body lock pass him.
Yeah.
And we learned, yes, he could body lock pass him
repeatedly,
which had to break Big Dan's down.
I think the first one was a legit. Big Dan didn't want the pass. I think the second one, you saw Big Dan go, we're close to the end of the match. I'm not really losing anything.
Dude, the one he passed right to mount. Like, it was like...
Yeah.
And that's a big man to be mounted on top. I mean, I guess he is small.
Maybe the third one, I thought it was Big Dan... It didn't seem like Big Dan defended as hard.
Yeah.
It seemed like Big Dan was waiting to try to get to the heel hook there, and so was planning to counter him when he passed to get under him.
Yeah.
And that didn't work. And it seemed like he didn't want to use the energy late in the match.
I took it as Nicky started to break him down and that he stopped fighting as well. But I took it as more of like a aggressive, like Nicky showed that he could do it. And then it was like that
I can keep doing it
now.
and
that he just kept on doing it. But you're saying that Dan slowly just was like, fuck it, I'm going to go into overtime anyway. Why am I fighting this?
It could be a combination of both, too. I think, but that in just looking, they had an overhead view of Dan's face, and it seemed like on one of those passes, he was just kind of...
like, whatever.
Yeah, he seemed to be like, all right, it's going to happen. Like, I'm not going to burn a bunch of energy trying to stop him from passing because he's probably not going to finish me. He's not going to get my back in this time we have left. And so I'm not going to burn my energy. I'm just going to whatever, he's going to pass. That's annoying, but I'll just deal with it. And again, that's one of the problems that I have with overtime is that there's no stakes in regulation if you can't finish the guy. Big Dan's like, he's not going to finish me from mount, so I'm not worried about it.
And the one thing to mention in this is probably one of the only times that Nicky is actually smaller than the person he's going against.
Yeah, it's infrequent.
Yeah, I don't think there are frequent men that can make Nicky Rod look little, and this guy made Nicky Rod look little.
Big Dan was 286, Nicky Rod was 234.
Yeah,
so he had 50 pounds
on
Nicky Rod, and Big Dan's not a fat guy. Big Dan is just a giant man that is a true almost 300-pound guy that doesn't have a lot of. I mean, he has a little bit of fat on him, but absolutely not
he's
overweight.
He's a ginormous man.
Big Dan's probably not comfortably making 250 looking like Nicky Rod. He's probably easily 30 pounds bigger than Nicky Rod if they had the same physique. He is much bigger. He's a giant dude.
And I don't know how often Nicky Rod gets somebody that's bigger than him.
They were talking about in one of the B Team vlogs how they're really happy that Heisem is at B Team.
Oh, because Heisem's bigger.
Heisem is similar size and similar athleticism to Nicky Rod. And there's not a lot of guys that are in the world that are in the room. They can give Nicky Rod kind of the rounds that he needs. Yeah. And Heisem is one of those guys that can do that. So they were happy that Heisem's going to be there because he can challenge him physically at that size. And that was a really cool. It was cool to have the camp band together and go like, oh yeah, we're happy to have that guy because he's going to challenge another one of our guys in the room in this specific way. So again, Big Dan, the bigger guy, but Nicky Rod continuing that body lock pass. And look, he's getting better and better and better at that body lock pass. And we're seeing that repeatedly. Every tournament now, he's passing the guy in the finals with that body lock pass.
Yeah.
I mean, he passed fucking Gordon.
Yeah.
He passed Penna with it. Like, he can pass anyone in the world with that pass now, and this cements it. They go to overtime. We want to talk about the choke or talk about the arm?
Well, we can talk about the fact that Dan went after the armbar twice and didn't even try to go after his back. He was like, fuck holding Nicky Rod's back. I'm going to go after his arm.
Which I think is a great decision. Again,
but I think
Nicky Rod is so good at getting
and the
on the
other
back.
thing is, Nicky Rod, we also have to talk about the fact that Nicky Rod, all of his matches went to OT.
Yeah.
And Dan's did not. So Nicky Rod...
had way more mat time.
And Dan saw how Nicky Rod would get out of his back, like in 2 seconds with everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sure it was, okay, we're going to go to the arm because we know that he can defend his back that well.
Mm-hmm.
And the first arm bar he got out of in no time at all, like seconds.
Yeah, very quick.
And then the second one, I was like, oh, Jesus,
This was flashbacks of Gordon Ryan versus Craig Jones, EBI 13 or 17?
I don't know.
One of those old school EBIs in 2017. Right after ADCC, might have been early 2018, but it was right after ADCC. They had a match at EBI, and Craig gets Gordon's arm and allegedly like cracked it.
Yeah.
And because in the post-fight interview, Gordon went, did he break your arm? Did he get your arm? Did it hurt you? And he goes, we'll know tomorrow. Yeah. And I've always thought like if he didn't get him, he would have said, no, it's fine. Yeah. But if he got hurt, that's the response he would have given. It was bad.
That
match.
Like, because he had his legs crossed on his arm. So as he pulled his arm, it was like Nicky Rod couldn't really get out of it because the cross of his legs were right where he couldn't really like roll and do like a hitchhiker.
The standard hitchhiker. He had to roll down to get out of it.
Yeah. So he had to do like he had to almost let go of his hands being held, give him the arm, and at that time use the free arm to address the feet to be then able to get out.
Yeah.
And that's a lot when somebody's like grabbing a hold of your arm.
And a guy's 50 pounds bigger than you. We know
and his face,
he can break bones.
And he says after the match that he didn't hurt his arm, but from his facial expressions, I think otherwise.
I think he hurt his arm a little bit.
I think so too.
But again, I don't
think it snapped, but I think he fucked up his shoulder.
Oh yeah, I think looking at because Nicky Rod did what Vinny Magalhaes did to Verdum in ADCC 2007. I think
Nicky Rod would let his arm break. That's
for $30,000. This is a $30,000 tournament.
I think for just the fact it was Big Dan.
Yeah, I think
even if it was 0-0, the fact that Gordon's coaching against you, Big Dan, I think you have to let your arm break in this situation if you're Nicky Rod.
Yeah, I think so. I think he would have let it break in this tournament. Again, Big Dan.
Not a fan of people breaking their shit, but like in a situation like this,
you understand. I understand.
I get it. I understand.
I was impressed.
I let my shit break for like a $5 medal, so I don't really care.
I was impressed that Big Dan went over the thigh and tried to do it, but Nicky Rod, by the time Big Dan had made the switch over to the outside thigh on Nicky Rod's head side,
he was already
Nicky Rod had turned his hips down, and that gave him the angle to pull underneath of the arm of the leg and get out. So then Nicky Rod goes, oh, that was bad.
Yeah.
I have to end this.
Yeah.
And because Nicky Rod is on, this is the final.
Yeah.
This is second or third?
Second.
This is the end of the second. So Nicky Rod has a rebuttal, and they can potentially go 2 more overtimes.
Rear naked chokes.
And Nicky Rod went, oh, that was bad. I have to finish this now.
And I was afraid that into this round that Nicky couldn't use that arm.
Yeah.
And then we learned maybe he used I don't know which arm he used to rear naked choke.
And think about it, I don't know.
I don't know which arm it was, but dude, he pulled that shit fast.
Yeah. Again, that's what we know Nicky Rod to be so good at. Like, he is one of the quickest rear naked chokers at heavyweight, and he's one of the best in the world at that. He gets to back, he throws it across, he immediately, what a lot of guys nowadays are getting caught up with is they're not able to get the set hand, because you can't, very few elite guys are you finishing with one arm.
Yeah.
It just doesn't happen anymore.
And getting the second arm in.
Getting the second arm through. We saw it on this tournament a ton. Guys will grab the hand. People figure it out to grab the hand of the secondary arm and pull it, and it's almost impossible to get it behind the head. Nicky Rod can get behind your neck so fast. He gets the first arm through, and then also chops behind your head so fast that guys are never getting a chance to actually grab and have that defense in the first place. Because a lot of people will go palm to palm and then slide through. Nicky Rod will just throw his arm like through and across to do it. His mechanics for how he does this are phenomenal.
Yeah.
And he gets it. He gets the choke. He rips the rash guard off. Big Dan looks pretty upset, understandably. And then Nicky Rod wins by rear naked choke in overtime.
Yep. And then Nicky Rod called out Gordon Ryan.
Nicky Rod called out Gordon Ryan for what was this?
He wanted a
USADA testing before and after
he
the match.
wanted an EBI 10-minute round with OT, and he wanted USADA testing before and after. And that's what he called out, and Gordon kind of said no. Yeah,
Gordon, I think Gordon made a longer post. You can go read Gordon's post. It was essentially
he basically says he's not at my level. No.
Or
you do my rules.
Yeah, which again he did beat him in ADCC.
Yeah.
Like that's I get it. They're having a feud back and forth right now. We saw the match at EBI.
Gordon Ryan also
Fight Pass
looked like a biker. He had a biker look.
He had an interesting look about him coming out. He looks healthier though. So hopefully
he does.
We'll see him back
in the
match.
He did look healthier.
And that's good.
Yeah, and he was there. He looked good.
I'm interested in the match. I would prefer it not in EBI overtime. The testing I could really care less about. Like we kind of guessing that Nicky Rod, it probably is natty with the testing he's done, and Gordon's probably not because he seems to be fighting it. And we on the show don't really care.
Yeah, we don't care one way or another.
We watch sports entertainment. It's if these guys want to go and take whatever they're going to take, that's kind of their prerogative. And we do a mostly untested sport where it's not banned in these tournaments, so there's not a problem in the sport that these guys do to do that if they want to go and make that decision.
Yeah.
A lot of guys have a problem with it. It's not my place to make a call. I'm not a professional athlete competing for $30,000 in my livelihood. It's not our place in my eyes.
So we'll see. We'll see what happens if anything ever comes out of this.
Yeah, they're gonna meet again. I don't know if it'll be this year or a couple years from now, but it's one of the few compelling matches left for Gordon. And so I think the money will eventually be there.
But I don't see Gordon coming back from this last medical issue, coming back straight to someone like him. He's going to do what he did last time. He's going to
take some on-ramp matches, take some feeder matches, and then, move up again to like something like ADCC, which I think is very reasonable. Again, if this match happens again, I want to see the best version of both guys. I don't want to see a diminished version of Gordon go against Nicky Rod, because then it's like, that's a boring, that's like, cool, he's sick. Like, I don't want to see that. I want to see the best both guys go against each other. But again, hell of a call out. I love the stipulations that get some interest. There's some more interest to the match now.
Yeah.
I don't think it'll happen, but if you're going to call someone out like that, I think the stipulations, for me at least, made that interesting. Like, oh, this is now a narrative that we can talk about on the show versus like, he called out Gordon.
Yeah.
It's a cool match. These guys are building towards a bigger super fight, and I hope both guys get paid handsomely for it because they're two of the best guys in the world.
Yep.
So Nicky Rod wins $30,000. I'm impressed with everyone in this tournament. Like, everyone in this tournament impressed me a ton throughout the entire card. We're not a huge fan of the rules for a lot of them. A lot of it was really hard to follow, and what exactly the rules were for like the resets and the overtimes. And I've watched a lot of these over the past 10 years. Not 10 years, like as long as EBI has been running.
Yeah.
I would love a little more production to explain some of that stuff.
Well, this wasn't EBI. This was FBI. No.
FPI.
FPI.
The FPI, which, yeah, man, that's fine. I would love a little more of that, but overall, I'm really happy with the level of talent that they had on this event. I would love to see these done quarterly. That
would be great.
Because if UFC can have this level of talent, like, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Pay the guys. $30,000 is life-changing money for grapplers. I think Nicky Rod is, very comfortable in what he's doing now and where he is, but that kind of money coming into the community is a good thing.
It is.
And broadens the sport. And again, being on Fight Pass, having the a full bracket and the super fights of top talent is great. I love that organizations are recognizing that and filling their card with the top guys in the world and the top women in the world.
And we'll be talking about these matches again before we preview the Who's Number One event in August.
Yeah.
Because a lot of these individuals...
This would be the most recent match between
and a lot of these individuals will be going against other members of the same card.
Mm-hmm. Craig's on that card. Duarte's on that card. Mergali's on that card. Penna's on that card. Is Nicky Rod on that card?
Haasam Reed going against Penna on that card.
Ethan Krellinston versus Dante Leon got announced for that card. I am hype for that matchup at 55. I am so excited about that matchup. That is a match to make. So that'll be a fun one. That card is coming up.
Nicky Ryan's on that card too, right? Isn't Nicky Ryan going against? Yeah, Nicky Ryan is going against. It's completely fallen out of my head who he's going against, but I'm pretty sure Nicky Ryan's on that card too.
It'll be a fun card. Miranda, you got anything else?
Nope, it's Friday night and I'm tired.
Yeah, and I gotta go. I gotta pack, and then we're gonna drive 4 hours tonight and 8 hours tomorrow, and so it'll be a good trip. We're gonna leave probably in 10 minutes after the show finishes.
Yeah.
So it'll be great. If you got anything else, as always in the show, I'm your host Maine, my co-host
Miranda,
and we got the Grappling around showing that what it is. Stay safe. If you like the show, please consider sharing it on Facebook with the folks at your gym. It's the best way that we grow the show, and we really appreciate it. You can reach out to us on email.
We also have Instagram. We have Facebook. We have Twitter. We have Google+.
Until that shuts down.
We have a website.
If you have an event you would like to have us cover, please let us know. If you have a name, like most people do, and you'd like to have us stop butchering it,
let us know.
Reach out to us. The show is also available on YouTube, Spotify, in addition to iTunes and every other podcast service. We very much appreciate your time, and thank you.